Introducing health and wellness advocate, veteran international real estate investment expert, author and speaker, Adiel Gorel.
Health tips, fitness tips, nutrition and well-being, world-class experts, all right here on my podcast, The Adiel Gorel Show. Now, when you said use it in the morning to get into a meditative state, or maybe, what's the length of time that you recommend? Because I know that everybody has their life and
well, that's my favorite thing because I recommend 1 minute. Basically, and I know I'm a doctor, so I've had I tell my patients you should meditate, right? And well, how long? Originally I said you should meditate 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. And they would get excited, they would do it for a week or a few days, and then they just didn't have the time. And then they get depressed because they felt they were a failure at meditating. So, and for me, it was hard to understand because I've meditated every morning and every evening for over 50 years. Right? It's just a natural routine for me, 20 minutes to 30 minutes to sit and meditate with a mantra, with a sound. So I figured my patients would do it because I had the research, I knew how good it was for them, but they just couldn't in all the activity of life do it. So I eventually said, I realized that if I could just have them do the sound, once I saw how immediate it was, I said, all I want you to do is 1 minute. And if you just do 1 minute in the morning, it's okay, or 1 minute at night, but ideally 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night. And what I was looking for was a regular practice, versus an erratic practice, because regular is more important than time, by the way.
Let's say that somebody does have the time. You talked about 1 minute. That sounds extremely appealing to the person of the 21st century with no time. But suppose that somebody said, okay, I do have time. What's the length of time that's optimal?
Well, I think with the sound, I would still go with no more than a minute, but I would integrate it with yoga stretching. I would integrate what they did in yoga. When you get through stretching, you go, Om, like that. That's the same thing. They knew how to tune. So they integrated sound and chanting with all their practices. The Buddhists did it. The Chinese did it in their Qigong exercises. It's been used and integrated with these other methods for thousands of years. I integrated with Qigong. For example, I would, if I move, you can see if I want to. Like so, I'll tap and then let my body move in big ways, and you get into the wave and surrender to the sound, and it's another form of meditation. Right, so you can integrate it. It works best, I think, really integrated with other methods. And there's nothing new about that. That's been around, and all these other methods have research now. Qigong and Tai Chi for Parkinson's, meditation like this for the heart, it goes on and on.
So I'm in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area, and some people here would say, okay, great, I got that. 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night, but I'm a life hacker. I want to be as best as I can be. Would it benefit me if I do it once in the afternoon, once at noon, 5 times a day?
Oh, I see. It's better to have something consistent and regular in terms of time. Same with eating, by the way. If you eat and have a little something in the morning, and something in the afternoon, something in the evening, it's consistent, you'll be better off. It's better to do it and to have a consistent, dedicated practice. Even if it's 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night, it's going to be far, far better than anything else. And if you have that way, even if you didn't do all your yoga, all your meditation, you still did your practice, right? So therefore, it's consistency that ultimately is going to ingrain it into your nervous system. Because you want that meditation to be like, if you have a day like you're like this, and you just all of a sudden you close your eyes and you go, the sound of the forks come to you. So you're training your nervous system to I like to say, we get messed up. There's guaranteed if you're going to live, you got to get messed up. If you don't, by the way, being in tune is the most boring state in the universe. Right? So therefore, if you want to go out, you want to have a good time in life, and you want to then be able to get back home in a way. Right? If you get lost getting back home, you start doing all kinds of weird behaviors that aren't good for you to get back. But once you have that consistent practice, that daily practice, even if it's a minute, but if it's more, if you want to do a little more, but you've got to have at least the 1 minute, right? And then all of a sudden things go crazy, and maybe you just say, wait a minute. Just like me in the anechoic chamber. I didn't know. All of a sudden, and the whole world looked differently.
Talking about an anechoic chamber, would it be beneficial for us, to look for one maybe in our vicinity and go into one?
You can. There are a lot of them around. They're oftentimes hard to get into. We have like at least 7 of them here around New York. Now I've even seen advertisements for them that nobody, if you can spend more than 5 minutes in this chamber without hallucinating, and so on. And it's true, because when I went in, I had a lot of meditation, a lot of silent retreats. I had done a lot of work on myself, psychotherapeutically, so I could sit. But for a lot of people that are like this, everything's outward. The moment they sit in there, it's scary, right? So I don't know if the anechoic chamber. I don't want to romanticize it. It's a desensitization chamber. It was put there by the CIA to interrogate people and make them uncomfortable.
But something that's available to all of us is those chambers where you lay in salt water,
Yeah.
in a sensory deprivation. And I've actually tried it, and I found it fascinating. I'm sure you do too, because you're a meditator. Those sound like they would be beneficial.
Oh, they're very good. In fact, I think they're the in between. And I like them a lot. They were developed by John Lilly, who I knew, and it's just the way. Again, if you can train yourself to lay in the salt water and be still. And by the way, I used to supervise 7 of those tanks, and we'd have people go crazy in them too. So so it's. But if you can be comfortable in one of those and love it, then you could go to the anechoic chamber and probably be just fine. But the anechoic chamber, really, it's more, the salt tanks are far more comfortable than the anechoic chamber. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
The salt tanks, they have an option for you to listen to music or sound. So now it's combining. What sound would you recommend that they pipe in if somebody goes?
Well, that's why I developed a CD calendula for tuning a sound, but I think ultimately you pipe in whatever it is that works for you. You don't want to pipe in something that you've tightened your body. That's the first thing, and then after that you can pick and choose. You can do brainwave music and things like that. You might like that better. I think it's more a matter of your personal taste. But remember, the anechoic chamber, there's nothing in there. That's the difference. There's no water by your ears. Our skin hears better than our ears. So in the anechoic chamber, there's nothing on your skin either. It's unbelievably, blank.
One thing you were talking about in your books, which I found fascinating, is healing and listening in general can be very beneficial. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Well, the modern term for it is mindful listening. The ancient would call it deep listening. There's different words for it. But the research on mindful listening, it allows us there's a place in our brain called a caudate nucleus. It lights it up, right? And when you're in this space, there's no such thing as doing something wrong. You're out of your judgmental mind, and you're able to perceive without dividing what you're perceiving. It gives you deep insight. It's the gateway to intuition, ultimately. And so we learn how to use our eyes to mindfully look at something, to view something, We learn how to use our ears to listen to something without giving it a meaning or value per se. And again, I'm actually writing a whole chapter for a book just on mindful listening and the research behind it. We all know, of course, the word mindfulness and meditation and leading to the relaxation response is so important. Well, listening mindfully to any sound, to me, is a form of meditation.
No, I'm getting quite excited for everyone because, as you said so well, you see that people, even if you tell them meditate only for 3 minutes at a time to start, and then still is a bit of an issue, but sounds to me like 1 minute.
Yep.
That is so doable. I'm starting to get quite excited for everyone.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. I learned it through my patients. They would do it. You know, it's one thing to tell somebody as a doctor what to do, another thing to get them to do it, right? And so I would tell them eventually I said, if you just did it once a day for 1 minute, as long as you do it consistently, I'm happy. And then guess what? They get a sense of success. They come, oh, I'm successful. So now all of a sudden you have this thought of success with the sound and training your nervous system. And if you did this for a few years, it's going to just get deeper and deeper and deeper.
So we talked about tuning forks. Obviously, those sounds go back millennia or more. What about singing bowls?
Yeah, it's the singing. I think behind me you can probably see a few. uh, I have every. This is my studio, and there's so many things in here. It's just not. I like to say I usually raise my hand and confess that I'm a sound hoarder. So,
that's a TV show right there.
It's a TV show, right? Exactly. And, but the crystal bowls, I love them. Crystal bowls. I have Peruvian whistling vessels. I have special instruments made just for me. I have piano lyres, pianos, and all kinds of things people have given me over the years. And basically, the crystal bowls, when used correctly, when used with some mindfulness and used by listening versus when you listen and play is different than playing, right? So you listen and you learn how to mindfully get feedback from who you're playing for or yourself. They're wonderful. The only challenge is there's two challenges with the crystal bowls. One is carrying them. See this? I put these in my pocket and I can take them anywhere, and my rotator cuffs are healthy. Those crystal bowls, I used to carry those around, and thank goodness I was younger. and I would usually break them too. I must have broken a number of them over the years. So they have a weight problem to move them around. But also, they say they're tuned, but they're really not tuned near as precisely as these. So in terms of relating sound to science, these are more quantified. If that's what you want to do. So the crystal bowls are harder to research because of that.
So now with more modern modalities, there is the binaural frequencies that people listen to on headphones.
Yeah.
Any feedback on that?
Yes, I make tuning forks for binaural frequencies also, for delta, for alpha, for theta, beta, different brain waves. And I actually believe that the CNG inspires what's called a gamma brain waves, which organizes the other brain waves. But basically, the brain waves, sometimes people think, well, I want a gamma wave, I want a delta wave, but these waves are all happening simultaneously. So therefore, all you're doing in different parts of your life is your brain, like when you go to sleep, your brain becomes more involved in a delta wave. When you're playing sports, it might be more involved in an alpha wave. When you're doing creative thinking, more involved in what's called a theta wave. And these waves your ability to move in and out of them effortlessly is really more important than the waves themselves. So we train people with biofeedback and the tuning forks to recognize and move in and out of the waves. It's a more scientific way of working with frequency. It's very effective. I've used it, for many, many people over the years. But again, I came to this just because it's so simple, and it's giving you, in a way, the key to get the other brain waves.
So, this is really, we talked about nitric oxide before. Now go back to nitric oxide for a second. The life of this gas seems to be about 6 seconds.
6 seconds, yeah, 3 seconds rising, 3 seconds falling. Yeah.
So clearly it has a short life. For our health, we would like to be on a regulated, nitric oxide. So, I mean, when you do the 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night, those are 12 hours apart. They will still keep you going, or how do you make the nitric oxide stay, so to speak?
Well, I think you make it stay by, again, it's how you adapt to the stressors in your life, right? So it teaches you this ability to be centered, both physiologically and psychologically, so that when something happens to you that shocks you or is uncomfortable, the word stress just means adaptation to change. So therefore, if you fail to adapt, that's when you get like this. Like, for instance, the story with me at the subway booth, when I get up to the end, I had failed to adapt. I was like this and didn't even know it. So we have so many things happening that we just push through and we don't even know we're not adapting, and so when you have the consistent practice, even it gives you all of a sudden, just like in the anechoic chamber, I go, boom, I'm centered. So, and once you know your center, the more often you can adapt. If you watch, I play golf, and I play golf at a pretty high level. And the one thing I noticed between what more amateur type golfers is when they make a mistake, all day long they walk in the golf course like this. Whereas if I make a mistake, I just take a deep breath, and I'm off. I go back home before I go to my next shot. And I think when we watch athletes, that's what they're able to do. When they mess up, they don't carry it with them the rest of the round.
That is so true. I mean, any sport, one of my biggest, admiration for those, athletes,
yeah.
Not their speed or strength or, agility, their ability to leave it, behind and look only at the now.
Yes, they train to do that, right? They train not to get lost. What about a musician? What if I'm over here playing the piano and I miss a note? When you're younger, you miss a note in a recital and you stop, but when you get old, you can't stop, right? And the great musicians, Art Tatum, they all say there's no such thing as a wrong note. In other words, you're in this mindful listening state and you can't possibly get caught up in a wrong note, right? And then they adjust immediately. So what we're looking for is that spontaneous adjustment to stress in the life.
So when somebody can spontaneously adjust to life throughout their work day, their day, that will keep the nitric oxide wave steady.
Absolutely, it would. That's the goal.
Now, let's say that it's a work in progress. Somebody listening, watching now can say, okay, I'm going to work on that, but that could be a work in progress. How about I simply take the tuning fork in the morning, a couple of hours later, just to ease my way into that kind of a state?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, but I just want to make sure that there's no such thing as a person that's not a work in progress. There's no enlightenment here, not as a noun. One is enlightening all the time. And when the nitric oxide is moving, it actually activates light inside of you. It's what causes fireflies to light up in their lanterns. It's so you become lighter when you're in this state. But at the same time, like I say, it's impossible. It's 100% impossible to live your life and do what you want to do and have a vision and move towards it without getting messed up. You know, if I meet people that say, you know, I'm perfectly centered and enlightened, you know, I immediately distrust them and think they're sociopaths. You know what I mean?
You can think about any example. Let's say you go out hiking on a mountain. Hiking, wow, beautiful. And then you trip and sprain your ankle on a stone. It can happen anymore. So, you know, now what do you do?
Well, what if you go out and you're sitting in nature and all of a sudden a bird poops on you? I mean, and now your whole day is like, ah!
If you're Newton, you say, oh,
the apple falls on your head.
Oh, I have a whole theory.
Exactly right. So we have to accept this, and when we accept it, we find ways to deal with it and make ourselves better at it. You know, just like an athlete would. And athletes will go for coaching, but God forbid people would ever go for therapy or coaching.
So true. So true. This is so true. So now I really want to be a little bit selfish, not just for me, but for all our viewers. You have enormous resources. You have books, you have tuning forks, you have many other things. If somebody is watching now and they want to go to your website, which you already told us it's biosonics.com, what would you recommend? This is me asking. You're not doing any selling here. This is me. I really want to know. I go to your website. What should I get?
All I recommend ever, by the way, is C and G and this fork. Right. That's it. That's everything. If I go and I do sessions, like I worked on Syrian refugee children for Doctors Without Borders, all I did was take these 3 tuning forks, had them in my pocket, I could do everything.
Okay,
right?
So let's say I have them now.
Right.
Here is the C and the G. You already said what to do. I bang them, let's say, on my knees a little bit, and I hold them here.
Yeah.
The 128 is more like
the 128, you have points, you can put them on. Acupuncture points, reflex points, and so on.
Okay.
And if you do get them, then you go and you see the videos on how to use them on the website, support videos, because you want to learn how there's different ways to tap them without hurting yourself. You don't want to bang them too hard like this. So you want to learn the technique, which is really simple, but it's a technique, right? Because they're instruments, you have to learn how to play them. And when you master them, they're effortless. You don't need musical training or anything like that. It's not necessary.
So this is the hardware. What about your books? Which one would be like a great, like if somebody wanted to read one, which one do you?
Well, what I recommend is Human Tuning. Right, that's the one that covers all of this and the research. That's the primary book that I'd recommend. And that's available on my site or on Kindle. I make it easy to get.
Now, when we talk about your CD, which I stumbled on its name before, the Suite for Pythagorean tuning forks, should I be getting that? And how should I be using it?
Well, if you get it, it has directions for use, right? And so it's just a matter of listening. Basically, you can put it on, and you could use it like you would the tuning forks. And also, for people who can't afford these things, if you go onto my website in the support section, there's a protocol for COVID, for the virus. And if you read it, there's a link that goes to a recording that you could listen to. I mean, I'm interested in people, not selling things, really. So therefore, all you need to do is just click, and you can have this recording as long as you want. You can give it to other people, whatever you want.
That is very nice to know, and especially we need it now during this COVID period, but we need it always, really, we do. Now, it's been said that you teach people, that you train practitioners and trainers. So 2 questions here. Number 1, do you work with people one-on-one? And if not, how does one find a practitioner that you had trained that does?
Well, no, I'm 73 years old. I retired from working with people a few years ago. I used to work and do sessions 20 to 30 a day, community sessions and so on. And I've seen thousands of people. I've worked in hospitals, and Doctors Without Borders. So I know what works. And now my goal is primarily to get people to meditate, to do something consistent for themselves. And I wanted all my patients to do that. They got better when they did it. In other words, sessions from therapists aren't magic. If they're not supported by daily activity on your part, they won't nearly work as well, right? So the way to get to me really is either like we're doing it now. We talk. I do some online classes. They're always on my website. I haven't traveled during COVID, but usually every year I would travel to. I used to come to San Francisco to teach. I come to LA. I come to Europe. I go to Switzerland or Germany. So I had an international travel schedule, and then during my classes, I oftentimes would give clinics, and in those clinics, I would train other people how to do it. Now, I don't keep a list of practitioners per se because when I do professional practice, you would see me as a psychologist or you'd see me as a naturopathic physician or both. And I would integrate sound into my practice. So most of the people I train integrate sound to the massage, to Reiki, to psychology, to medicine. So I see it as something you would integrate into what you're trained to do. But just the sound healing by itself, I'm sure there are people who could do it, but I don't particularly keep a list of them.
Well, I interviewed people who I believe you know, Jonathan and Andy Goldman, about
Yes.
humming. So can you build us a little verbal bridge between the tuning forks and the humming?
Well, it's an integrative method, and I recommend it in my books also that when you're like this, you can just listen, but you can also take the forks, tap, and hum like this, and it's vibrating your lips, and then we don't have the forks, and you can just, you internalize the sound better that way. So it's a wonderful integrative method of working with the tuning forks. Again, it's ancient and very old. And Jonathan and Andy wrote a great book on humming. I have to say that they did a great job. And again, I love it because when you take something so simple and you realize how powerful it is, it's so easy to integrate into your life. I hum all the time. Right? In fact, when I learned piano early on, I used to play and hum. And my teachers tell me you can't do that, and it took me years to get back to humming. So now I play and hum again.
So, this is, I feel like this is, we talk about it and we are all pleasant and quiet and we exchange ideas and we learn from you. But to tell you the truth, when I stop and think for a second what you're talking about, what it really means, what are we doing here sitting peacefully? I want to get on the roof and start screaming.
Yep.
Everybody does and hears about this. Is critical stuff.
It's critical. And again, I like to say that there's the politics of healing, and there's certain daily practices that we could have that would make us so much stronger in our immune system and our way of being. And yet there's no money in it in terms of like a drug or something. In fact, when I was hired to do the research with the herbs, it was to create a drug, basically, because there's more. And they stopped the herbal research and used it to create a drug, to synthesize a drug. There's more money that way. I understand that. There's always politics, right? So, but these things can go beyond. If you just take responsibility and you look at the research, these simple practices can do a lot. I like to say your brain is nature's drugstore. So when you're in tune, your brain makes the chemicals far better than any pharmaceutical company.
Well, just imagine that COVID starts and in March, we see somebody on TV saying to us, go in the sun, check your vitamin D level, take some vitamins, hum, do the 2 and 4,
Meditate. Yep.
meditate.
No, I never heard it. Have you ever heard it?
No, I didn't.
And and yet all these people are scientists, and all the research is there for doing that. I've never heard it. All I've heard is a vaccine and a pill or whatever. That's it.
No money. So, I mean, now let's talk about this from the standpoint. We are in the COVID era. Let's say that somebody got sick. We are hoping that they got sick in a very mild way, but what can they do in addition to all we talked about so far to remediate a situation that is more acute?
Well, that's what I mean by integration with what you're trained to do. If I had COVID, I want a doctor that understood COVID, that was trained. And then that doctor, like for instance, when I saw patients in Europe, I worked at the Berker-Brenner Clinic. I worked as a biologic physician, right? They came in with conditions what I understood, but while they would be there, I would actually come to their bedside and I'd tap the forks and hold them in their ears, right? I'd tell them to have a good thought, and I would do this. And I did it in the morning and at night because they couldn't do it. And if I ever walked by and didn't have my tuning forks, they would start going crazy, because it was so good for them. And we found that we could just see they got better quicker, because they had a daily thing that was stimulating, we say this nitric oxide inside of them, but also was just stimulating them being centered and comfortable and safe inside of themselves. And the C&G is the simplest of all intervals. That's what I like about it.
Okay, so I mean, this is so simple, so useful, so doable. 1 minute, even most. This is really great. Now, I want to ask you about this. I know you're an accomplished musician, but let's talk about the non-accomplished musicians. People, I believe, can derive a lot of benefit from just singing.
Yes.
So for the person who is not a singer, who is not anything, would incorporating we talked about humming already, some form of singing, I believe, and I think there is some research, very beneficial for.
Yes, it's extremely, to sing, to hum, to play instruments. You don't need music. Like behind me, you see a piano lyre, that I have people play that with no musical training. They go on what I call sound journeys, right? And when you do that, in fact, it's harder to get musicians to do it than it is non-musicians. Because once you mindfully listen, and the problem that non-musicians have is they try to play music, right? And they can just get out of this playing music and listen to sound and enjoy a sound journey. It's amazing what it does inside of you. It's the same thing if you want to sing. You don't have to sing a piece of music. Just go, and don't worry about right and wrong, and let your voice come through. Then I like to say you'll become a sound artist, not necessarily a music artist.
When you're talking about the piano wire and people just playing it for the sound, for some reason I had an image of a kazoo in my head, because that's such. Yeah.
It could be any harmonica. It could be just banging a pipe. As long as you're mindfully listening and enjoying it, it's going to have a profound effect on you.
John, I have to tell you, I'm beyond thankful that you took the time to be here with us. I believe that what we discussed could be incredibly useful. And I believe that what you've created over a lifetime really is just beyond words. It's really something special.
Well, thank you. And also my goal is really to give that away. And I have, like I said, I give a lot of things pro bono for free. And I give a lot of, I have to live, so I market some things and so on. But ultimately, everything is there. I approach it as a scientist and an artist. I want to contribute to the scientific community. I want to do it with integrity. I want it to be peer reviewed. At the same time, I want to be an artist. I want to do and be creative. And I think it's science and art. I think art should inform science, and science should inform art. right? That's really what I'm shooting for. And anybody that takes my work and does it the way that I do it, there's probably a problem. They should create your own way of doing it. And I'd be very, very happy.
John, thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thanks for joining me today. Click the subscribe button for more video. Got a question or comment? I love questions and comments. Leave yours below. And here's another video you've got to see.